Hello everybody, this is Farhan, and this is a video tutorial about how to apply editing controls to your list. Um, I did a lot of searching getting started on this list editing capabilities, and I thought that I'd make a video about it because I think many people would have difficulty in doing this, especially if they're getting started with React Native. The starting point of this video is a very simple application that lists a few tasks with a description and a date, and the number of hours you spent on each task. And what happens is that it's just a very simple one-page app. On when the app loads, it just gets a task list on component mount. Uh, and that gets data from I have a server running on localhost, and all it does is it just brings in a few tasks with this information. I'm not going to go into too much detail about how this list is created and how I've displayed this list. What I will talk about in this tutorial is how can you apply a checkbox to your task list when you press edit on the top right of your view. So if I click edit here, there should be a button here that says edit, and when I tap that, checkboxes appear next to each item, and I can perform different um, operations on my checked items. So let's get started. One thing I would like to point here is that along with React Native, I am including another library called Native Base. What Native Base does is it just allows you to use very simple controls, such as the checkbox, which we will use in this tutorial. And it just makes formatting your application very easy. So I'm also not going to go into details about how I've included native base in this app. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do, of course, is I just want to show a button here on the top right that says edit. The way I do this is in my render method, there's a header, and there's an empty left container. I don't want anything in my left area. There's a body which shows my tasks, which you see here, and in the right I will add button with text that says edit, and I'll close that and I save it, and it shows a button like that. I want it to look more like the standard button, so I'm just going to add the transparent property of this button. It just looks like a pretty standard button. On this edit, when I press it, I want the checkboxes to appear. So let's do this by doing on press. This dot edit mode enabled. Actually, let's make that toggle edit mode. So when I tap it, it goes back to the normal non-edit version. And here I will do, let's just go above render row, and I'll make this toggle edit mode. And at this point, I want to change a property that says that this edit mode is enabled or not. So first, in my constructor, I will add a state variable called edit mode. Make that false on startup. And here I want to do this dot set state edit mode is equals to not this dot state dot edit mode. So this is just a very simple construct. It says set the edit mode to whatever it is not. So if the edit mode is true, the not operator will set it to false and assign that value. Let me just console.log here and say edit mode value is now edit mode. This dot state dot edit mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my terminal, just clear that, and if I press edit, it's false, and now it's true, and now it's false. So I have a very simple thing going for the edit mode toggle. The next thing I want to do is, along with each row item, I want to add a checkbox. That's pretty simple. Within my render row method, all I will do is that you see here that a list item is being called, and all I will do is I will add checkbox, which is a control from React Native. So let me first include that checkbox, and then go back to render row and do checkbox. That's it. And as you can see, an empty checkbox is appearing. If I just do checked is equals to true, all of these will be checked. Yes, they are. So I'm just gonna, but we only want this check to be true when you tap it. If I do something like that, nothing is changing, because really there is no property that determines what is the check status of every task. So we'll get to that next. So let me turn that off. Now what's happening in this app flow is that in the beginning, tasks are fetched. They're fetched here in this get the data callback method. And what I want to do at this point, and when the tasks are fetched, this piece of code is run. This code is run when tasks have been fetched. So what I want to do is I want to add a property to each task saying that this task is checked or not. What I will do for that is that when I get the data, just after I've gotten my task array, I will add a simple map function. Task array is equals to task array.map. It'll take the data of each task and apply this function to it. And this function is that I want to create a new object. Let's say O is equals to object.assign data. What this does is that it creates an object which converts data into which takes all the properties of this data or each task and assigns that to O. And here now I will add a new property called isChecked and make that false, because none of these tasks are checked in the beginning, and then return O so that all the tasks are updated with this new map method. That's actually just these 3 lines of code. We'll add a property isChecked and set that to false. And then what I want to do is that instead of saying a checkbox is either forced false or true, I want each task to tell me whether this task is checked or not. And I will do that by just accessing the row data property is checked. And what that should do is that it should make all these tasks unchecked, because all these tasks have been initialized with the property false. The next thing I want to do is that whenever I tap a checkbox, I want that tasks is checked to be changed to, if it's false, then I want it to be true. So I will add a property to this checkbox, and that property is on press. And what I want that to do is this dot toggle check for task, and I'm just gonna pass row data to it. Row data.id. I don't need all of the row data to be passed to that method. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want to fetch the property of is checked for that task, and I want to change that to its opposite value. So in other words, if it's true, I want it to be false when it's tapped, and this method will do that. Toggle check for task ID. The next thing I want to do is that I want to find the task from this task ID in my uh, state, and I want to change that value. So before I do that, I want to be able to find where this task ID exists within our task array. For that, I will make a very simple utility method that just finds and returns the index of the task and searches for it. So I'll do that by um, adding a new method called find task index, and I will pass it the task ID. And at this point I want to get the array of tasks, so from the state, so I'll just do let tasks is equals to this dot state. So get me the current array of tasks from this dot state, and for I is equals to 0, I less than tasks dot length, I plus plus, look within the array if tasks of this dot id double equal to task id. I want it to return the index, and the base case should be, it doesn't return any value, so it can return like a default -1 value. So it's a very simple utility method that just finds the index of the task within my task array. So here what I will do then in this method is I will declare a variable called, let's say, found index is equals to this dot find task index task id. So at this point with found index I will have the index of that task, and let's just stop there and see if this works. So console.log index of this task is found index. So we did a few things here. The first thing we did was that on the checkbox on press we called a method toggle check for task, and all that does for now is just tells us the index of that task within the array of tasks. So if I type here, it should show me 0 because it's the first value. If I do it here, it should be 2. So let's see if this works. Let's go back to terminal. Let me clear that. So yep, that's it. Now I want the toggle method to actually change the property is checked. That will happen in two steps. The first step is that the is checked value will be set for that task in the tasks array, and the second thing is that the list that you see in the app is updated with the new task array. So the first step is done by making a copy of the tasks array that we have. So let's just call it new tasks. This dot state dot tasks, and all I will do is that at new tasks, it's a copy of the array. So I'll just take found index dot is checked is equals to reverse it, not new tasks found index dot is checked. That's it. The next thing, that's all we need to do. So at this point we have a new array in which that tasks is checked value has been set to the opposite of what it was. In React Native, it is very important to understand, and it took me a while as a beginner myself to realize this, that the list is only updated when the data source of that list has been updated. So if you see the source code, you will see that I'm doing two things. I'm getting the tasks that are fetched from the web service, and I'm setting the data source, which is cloned with the rows of tasks array. I'm not going to go into a lot of details about why data source is populated like that. And then this data source is used down here in the list view as the data source of that list view. Now this data source needs to be updated to reflect the new value of is checked. So what we need to do at this point is we need to update the data source. So we will do that by declaring a new data source value, a variable, and it's just going to be a copy of how I declared it in the top here in the constructor. So I'm just going to copy all of that. Just copy it here, and instead of calling it data source, we call it new data source. It's very simple. The second thing I will do is that I will update the list to use this new data source. So this dot set state tasks. I want the tasks list to be updated as well, which, as you know, new tasks is the updated value of the tasks array. And secondly, data source will be new data source dot clone with rows and new tasks. Oh, sorry, there's extra comma here. And that's it. This will set both tasks array in my state, which will actually not update the list view, and it will also update the list view by updating the value of data source. So let's see if this works. I'm just going to save that. Yep, that's it. So what is happening here is that whenever I press this checkbox, it calls this method, it updates the isChecked value for that task, and this list view is updated. And this is what will allow me to show the correct isChecked value here. And that is the end of the first part of this tutorial. In the next part, we want to do some real work with it. As you know, this edit is just showing these checkboxes and these and they're empty. But realistically, we want to be able to select a bunch of these tasks and maybe delete them or perform some other actions on them. In the third part of my tutorial, we will also talk briefly about making this edit, work in a nicer way, so that the checkboxes come in a cool animated way, and instead of like this, the way you see. And of course, we want to be able to toggle the edit mode. We'll talk about that in the third tutorial. Okay, so that's the end of this tutorial. I hope you found it useful, and please take a look at my other tutorials if you want to know more about manipulating lists. Thank you.